Hello everyone and welcome to episode 7 of Discovering Steven Universe. Today the episode I'm going to be talking about is Bubble Buddies, and this introduced to us a character that I've actually been wondering about for a little while since I've been watching, because she appears in every intro sequence, like kind of right in the foreground, only for a second or two. But yeah, let's get right into talking about my favorite parts of this episode. Starting with Steven's crush. The fact that Steven so obviously has a crush on this character, and just the way he reacts to how people question it, or more specifically the way he reacts to how the gems act around it, is like he just encompasses that young child, like, having a crush on someone. It's like, really embarrassed, doesn't want to show it, but at the same time is, strangely, well, not strangely, but it's like, just sort of proud of it, but doesn't want to show it to everyone. I don't think I did try, I don't think I made any sense there. But then again, neither does having a crush when you're a kid. I know because I had several of those. But anyway, yeah, I just love the way that they portrayed Steven's crush on this girl before he really even met her. And I think one of the best moments in the early phase of the episode was after he rode his bike in the sand, which was just a bizarre thing to see. And the gems themselves kind of pointed out in the way they emoted when he went off in his bike. But when he tried to get back up on his bike and it fell down and he just started crying, I mean, it's like you have a crush on someone, especially at that age. If something like that happens, it crushes you. And I just thought that they portrayed that really, really well in this episode. Just like the embarrassment that Steven had right in front of this girl that he really likes. So yeah, I just thought that was really well done. Now, moving on from there, my second favorite part of this episode, and basically the best part of this episode, Connie. The character herself, Connie. We learned so much about her, and there's still so much left to learn, really. But the character is just wonderful. Especially, there are certain aspects of the character's personality that really work for me, partially because they remind me of a few aspects of my wife, who, I mean, she's definitely not, sort of they're not copies of each other by any means. I don't see that at all. But there are just certain aspects, like Connie's love of reading. My wife definitely shares that. And just a few other little personality traits that I won't go into too much detail on, or really any detail on, otherwise this video will go on forever. But just coming to meet the character in the beginning worked really well, and even just in those first few scenes where she doesn't say anything, at all, that just showed us a lot of aspects about her character without words. And then those are further accentuated as she does talk and does we'll begin to learn more about her personality. I really like the way just that the writers for this episode did that. I thought it was accomplished really, really well. And, even though we've learned a bit about a few other secondary characters in the last few episodes, this is definitely the deepest level to which, at least I feel, we've gotten to know any of these secondary characters, which actually goes into a theory I have, but that will be coming up later. Now, my third favorite part of this episode was the bubble itself, and there's so many questions I have about the bubble, beginning with the fact that when it actually occurred, we got the rose image as the bubble itself was forming, so that only further accentuates the fact that I guess Steven got his gem from his mother, who I hope we learn more about in the future, other than just exposition, maybe like an episode dedicated to her, which I'm sure will happen. But I don't know, I found that intriguing that we finally did get to see another actual power of Steven's as far as the gem goes. I don't really count the cat fingers thing, although that is definitely, shape-shifting is definitely a power. I don't see it as one that Steven will probably be using much in the future, but in the first episode we saw the shield, which was really cool, but it was only there for like a second. And then this time we get the bubble, the protective bubble, which, I mean, it took up most of the episode, and I'm still trying to figure out what it is specifically that made the bubble finally disappear. Because it wasn't until, I want to say it was right after Steven returned Connie's bracelet that it occurred, and that they made a real connection. But again, I don't know how that works exactly, because even Steven doesn't know how his powers work. So I kind of expect that once he does get more control over his powers, that we as an audience might get a better understanding of how he does it, like whether it's controlled by his emotions or what exactly. But yeah, I just really like the bubble, the whole deal around it, and I hope to learn more about it and some more of his powers and his mother as episodes come along. And the people behind the show have definitely proven that they can fit a lot into just an 11-minute episode, especially in this one, with us getting to know Connie as well as we did. Now, my fourth and final favorite part of this episode would have to be the Gem's responses to Connie, and then also just the way Steven acts around her. They are such, and I don't know, I suspect this is the way they're intended to be portrayed, but they are such different levels of moms. Basically, like Pearl is definitely the scheduling mom. It's like, we need to make a play date, we need to contact her mom, and blah de blah. And well, actually, Amethyst might be more of like a big sister than a mom. Not necessarily, but I've seen some moms be this way too. But it's like, you like her, don't you? I loved that aspect of it. And then you have Garnet, who is just as always, she's just very, a woman of few words, but she seems to kind of say the most in what she does. It's like, she trusts Steven, at least that's the feeling that I get from how she acts towards Steven. And actually, I'm going to add on another favorite to that, even though I didn't write it down, but the interactions with some of the different characters like Lars and Onion, who I'm going to comment on in a little bit. Just the way that Steven explains the interactions with those characters. Like, he says that him and Lars are basically BFFs, which doesn't show exactly, but I mean, clearly Steven sees something there, whether it be naively or he sees beyond Lars just being a jerk. And, without going into really any more detail, just as you watch the cartoon, in that span of just a minute or two, a lot of questions come up regarding some of the characters and their relationships with each other. Like, do these characters actually get along? And when Steven says they're crazy about each other, like, in my mind, I'm not going to say who the character is, obviously. If you've watched it, you know who I'm talking about. But it's like, are they actually crazy about each other? Like, is Steven just kind of, again, being naive? Or is there something there that maybe we don't see and those characters don't see, but Steven does? I don't know. But I love that part of the episode. Now, moving on to my annoyances with the episode, I actually only had one. And that would be not so much the character Onion, but his art. There was something just off about the way Onion was drawn. Now, admittedly, especially compared to the pilot's art, the show definitely goes for a simplistic, simplistic is the best way to put it, but they go for that very simplistic look, where there's not a lot of detail to really any of the characters. But with Onion, it almost, at least to me, it seemed like he never completely got out of the just line art phase almost, or, well, that doesn't make much sense, but like he doesn't really seem to have any shading or any detail at all for his character art, and just something about that felt really off. And I don't know if that's on purpose, if that's just me reading a bit too much into it or what, but yeah, something felt really off about that. And maybe it's just that it's a brand new character and they didn't entirely know how to portray him yet. I don't know, well, I can only assume the character will appear again because we haven't gotten any backstory on him at all. But yeah, I'm just kind of curious about that, and it left me, that's the only part of the episode that really left me feeling, I don't know. But yeah, so, okay, those are my favorites and not negatives, but my favorites and annoyances from the episode. If you have any of your own, please do leave them in the comments down below, and leave your thoughts about my favorites and annoyances as well. I'm definitely looking forward to any thoughts you might have, or maybe any insight to the character Onion and maybe whether or not his art was meant to portray something. I don't know. But moving on from there, I mean, as always, the music in the episode was wonderful. I don't have any idea what the actual tracks are called. Those of you that do, leave some of your favorites down below. As for the quote of the episode, definitely, well, as far as an actual quote, which I didn't write down, but it has to be Steven explaining why he had the bracelet and why he had become, basically sort of infatuated with Connie. I really love that section. But my actual quote of the episode, because it was adorable and the way Steven reacted to it, well, Steven and the other characters reacted to it, funky flow. The way Steven says it in the beginning and the way the Gems respond to it, just like, funky flow. And then at the end, when Garnet comments on Steven's, or Garnet says, like, don't mess up his funky flow. And then as they walk away, Connie says, funky flow? So I really enjoyed that aspect. Oh, my wife is in the back. I think she wants my attention. I will cut this section out. Yes. Okay, moving on from there, to talk about my question for this episode, and it might not be that surprising, but who is Onion? Like any of the other characters that we met, we had sort of a pre-existing relationship as the viewer with. But this Onion character just kind of came out of nowhere with a very, I don't know the right way to put it, but it was hard to get a grasp on the character's personality really at all, because he didn't talk, only seemed to respond through thumbs up and, just kind of staring and eating popcorn. But at the same time, it's like we got that little bit of idea about him in that he wasn't really able to make out, he wasn't able to put together the pieces of what Steven was trying to draw on the bubble. But then when Connie clearly wrote it out, harpoon gun, it actually, he grasped that aspect. But I'm interested to find out more about the character. I want to find out whether or not the simplistic, in my mind, art is part of who this character is, or just more about him in general. I want to find out more. I think I've said that like 20 times so far. I apologize for being repetitive. But moving on from there, as for my theory regarding this episode, my theory is that Connie is going to become a core secondary character for this show, along the same lines as Greg Universe. And the reason I feel that way is because, up until now, the only time we had actually seen Connie was in the introduction, and she's very much like in the foreground of one of the short segments of the intro as the van is going by. And I don't know, just in my mind, I don't see why they would have made the character so central to our attention, even as short of the time span as it is. I don't know why they would have done that and then waited so long to introduce the character if there wasn't something about her that might be expanded on in the show. Again, I could be reading too much into it, but that's just the way I feel. And especially regarding Steven's feelings toward her, I think that might be like the relationship there, whether it, you know, they grow into like a couple as they grow up, maybe. I mean, they're both relatively young, so I don't know how much they would go into that exactly, but whether they actually, you know, form a relationship or they just are friends. I honestly feel like she's going to become a core secondary character, and I suppose I'll just find that out as I go along in the show. Alright, so those are all my thoughts about Bubble Buddies. Again, for those of you that have watched the episode already, which if you haven't, I don't know why you're watching this. Again, please do let me know all of your thoughts down below. I would love to hear them. And next time we will be discussing Serious Steven, which is an episode I've actually already watched, and I'm definitely looking forward to talking about it. I just need to write down some of my further thoughts to make sure I don't miss anything. But alright everyone, again, please leave your comments down below. If you like this, please do like and subscribe. I think that's the first time I've said that in this series, so hopefully no one will get annoyed at that. But alright, I will see you all next time for the next Discovering Steven universe for Serious Steven. Later, everyone.